Late one evening in Ouagadougou, 8 foreign aid workers were quietly escorted out of their hotel by military intelligence. No media, no warning, no explanation. By morning, the entire city was whispering one name: Ibrahim Traoré. Brothers and sisters, Traoré's voice thundered on national television hours later. We will no longer allow wolves to disguise themselves as helpers on our land. The room went silent. The world took notice, because these weren't just any aid workers. They represented a powerful Western organization known for humanitarian missions. But in the eyes of Traoré and his government, they were something else entirely: spies. For months, Burkina Faso's intelligence units had been tracking unusual communications, encrypted messages sent between local NGOs and foreign embassies. Officials noticed that certain aid teams seemed to appear in villages close to military zones or near gold mining sites that were recently reclaimed from foreign control. Coincidence? Not according to Traoré. He believed the aid operation was a cover, a strategy by Western nations to gather intelligence about Burkina Faso's new alliances with Mali, Niger, and Russia. One official said off record, "They came with smiles and cameras, but their eyes were everywhere. They wanted to know what we're building and who's helping us." And when Burkina Faso's soldiers raided the group's compound, what they found shocked everyone. Hidden inside boxes labeled medical supplies were satellite transmitters, encrypted laptops, and GPS trackers, all linked to foreign servers. The evidence was undeniable. Burkina Faso had just uncovered a modern espionage network disguised as aid. But here's the part the world media didn't show you. These arrests weren't just about spying. They were a warning, a message to every foreign agency still operating in the Sahel. This is a new Africa, and we are watching you. And as news of the arrest spread, panic followed. Embassies demanded explanations. Western officials called it a misunderstanding. But Traoré didn't blink. He looked straight into the cameras and said, "Those who hide under the flag of humanity, but sell the souls of our people, will face the truth in daylight." The line went viral. Within 24 hours, hashtags like Traoré speaks truth and Africa not for sale trended across social media. The young African generation saw something deeper, not an arrest, but a declaration of independence from Western interference. But what really triggered these arrests? Who were these 8 individuals? And which global powers were backing them? Stay tuned, because what comes next reveals a shadow game stretching far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. The Western media called it a humanitarian misunderstanding. But inside the walls of Ouagadougou's military headquarters, the truth was far darker. The 8 aid workers were not ordinary volunteers. They carried diplomatic-level passports, untraceable encrypted phones, and letters signed by 2 Western embassies. And that's when the Burkina intelligence services realized this was not charity. This was surveillance. "Brothers and sisters," Traoré said during a late-night emergency broadcast, his eyes sharp, his voice unshaken. "These so-called helpers were here to map our resources, study our alliances, and weaken our defenses." His words cut like fire. The world had seen African leaders accuse the West before, but never with evidence this detailed, this confident. Documents recovered from the suspects' laptops revealed detailed satellite maps, not of famine zones, not of refugee camps, but of gold belts, military installations, and energy projects involving Russian engineers. Some emails directly referenced meetings with organizations linked to Western intelligence. One folder was even titled Sahel Monitoring Internal. It was undeniable. Burkina Faso's revolution had caught the world's eyes, and the aid was the perfect disguise. Inside the military command room, Traoré held a private briefing. Cameras weren't allowed, but according to an officer present, his words were unforgettable. "We are not fighting just for Burkina Faso. We are fighting for Africa's right to breathe freely. They come with medicine, but take our minerals. They come with sympathy, but collect our secrets." He paused. Not anymore. That night the orders were clear. The 8 individuals would remain detained under national security laws. But here, where things got explosive, Western diplomats demanded their immediate release, threatening to cut humanitarian aid worth millions of dollars. The same aid that, according to Traore's government, had strings attached to every dollar. If freedom has a price, Traore said, then we refuse to buy it. In just 2 days, Burkina Faso had turned down $60 million in foreign assistance, a move that stunned the international community. The decision sent a message across Africa. Burkina Faso would not kneel for food, nor beg for money, not when its dignity was on the line. Neighboring countries watched closely. In Mali and Niger, similar operations began investigating their own foreign NGOs. Reports emerged that multiple Western-funded charity groups were quietly packing up their offices overnight. The ripple effect had started, and in the heart of Ouagadougou, people took to the streets, waving flags, singing national songs and chanting, "Burkina Faso is not for sale." Women held signs saying, "We trust our captain." Children painted Traore's name on cardboard. To them, he wasn't just a president. He was the man who stood up when others bowed. But while the world argued over the arrests, something much bigger was unfolding behind the scenes. A massive realignment of power between Burkina Faso, Russia, and a new African defense pact. Because Traore wasn't done yet. He had a plan, and this plan would shake the very foundations of Western dominance in the Sahel. "They spied on our land to stop our rise," he told his council. "But now we will rise higher than they ever imagined." The room erupted in applause, and that's when Burkina Faso made its most shocking announcement yet, one that would push Washington, Paris, and London into emergency meetings overnight. The arrests were just the beginning. What came next wasn't about aid or espionage anymore. It was about Africa declaring its sovereignty in the 21st century, where Traore's government unveils its counterattack. A bold operation that exposed how deep the Western network truly went, and a fiery speech that made millions across Africa stand up and say, "Enough." The world thought the arrests would end the story. But for Ibrahim Traoré, this was only the beginning. Because beneath the calm surface, Burkina Faso had already prepared its counter-strategy, a digital and diplomatic strike that would change how the world saw Western aid. In the early hours of Monday morning, the Ministry of Security released declassified evidence on national television. Emails, internal memos, photographs, GPS data. It was undeniable. The so-called aid mission was a front for intelligence gathering, funded by 2 foreign NGOs linked to European governments. The revelation shook every newsroom from Paris to Washington. Western officials called the allegations unfounded, but their silence grew louder each hour. "Brothers and sisters," Traore said in his live address that evening, his voice steady but filled with power, "we will not be slaves in our own land. If they come with food, they must not bring chains. Burkina Faso will not bow. We are not beggars. We are the sons of Africa." Crowds erupted in applause. In villages and cities alike, people cheered his words through radio speakers and mobile phones. In one clip that went viral, a market woman said through tears, "He speaks for us. He's the first to speak without fear." But that wasn't the only bombshell. Burkina Faso's intelligence agency had discovered a hidden communications relay tower near the northern border, disguised as part of an environmental research project. Inside were encrypted devices and signal interceptors capable of tracking military radio frequencies. Within 48 hours, the equipment was seized. And just like that, a foreign intelligence network was dismantled without a single shot fired. In the Sahel, that was unheard of. For decades, African nations had complained of hidden surveillance under the mask of development aid, but no one had ever called it out this directly until now. Across Africa, the echo spread. In Mali, Niger, and Chad, leaders began auditing foreign NGOs, following Burkina Faso's lead. Within a week, over a dozen Western organizations were suspended for national security reviews. African social media exploded with one phrase, "the Traore effect." Even commentators in Europe admitted it. Burkina Faso had started something unstoppable. For the first time in modern African history, wrote one journalist from Le Monde, a young leader is rewriting the rules of engagement between Africa and the West. But while the West scrambled to defend its image, Traore was already moving on. Behind closed doors, He met with military leaders from Niger, Mali, and Guinea, building a new Sahel security alliance to monitor borders, protect resources, and share intelligence without Western oversight. The message was clear. Africa would now guard itself. And then came the moment that froze the world. In front of a roaring crowd at the Independence Square in Ouagadougou, Traore delivered a fiery address, the kind of speech that would echo across the continent for decades. They watched us from satellites, they mapped our minds, they wrote our future without our consent. But today, I say to the powers of the world, Africa is not your backyard. We are the guardians of our soil, our gold, our dignity. And if you fear an awakened Africa, then you should fear us already. The crowd thundered. Flags waved. And from that moment, the 8 arrested aid workers were no longer seen as a small case. They had become the symbol of Africa's defiance. In Western capitals, diplomats debated sanctions. But quietly, intelligence agencies began pulling their field researchers out of African countries. The message had landed. The age of silent exploitation was coming to an end. Meanwhile, Burkina Faso announced a new national initiative to train young citizens in cyber defense and journalism, ensuring no foreign narrative could ever rewrite their truth again. If they control the camera, Traore said, we will control the story. And that line, powerful, fearless, became the slogan of a generation. Weeks later, when the detained aid workers were deported, the Western media said the situation was resolved peacefully. But in the streets of Burkina Faso, people knew better. They hadn't just expelled spies, they had reclaimed their voice. The story of 8 arrests became a revolution of ideas. One small nation had looked the world's greatest powers in the eye and said no. Burkina Faso was no longer invisible. It was untouchable. So what do you think? Is this the start of a new era for Africa, where every leader stands with Traore's courage and every nation writes its own destiny? If you believe in Africa's awakening, hit subscribe, share this video, and let the world hear this voice of truth. Because, brothers and sisters, this is not just a story. This is history being written in real time.